Mira didn't know that the man watching her from across the restaurant was the Alpha King. She didn't know that her blind date had been paid to abandon her, and she certainly didn't know that she'd been under royal protection her entire life. What she did know was that Marcus was now 2 hours late, and every person in Romano's was staring at her with that particular mixture of pity and embarrassment reserved for women who'd been stood up. The borrowed dress from her roommate suddenly felt too tight, too obvious, too desperate. She'd spent 3 months' worth of coffee money on getting her hair done for this. 3 months of instant ramen so she could afford to look like she belonged somewhere nice for once. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Sorry, can't make it." Something came up. That was it. No explanation, no apology beyond those 5 careless words. Mira stared at the message until the letters blurred, her throat closing around the humiliation. She could hear her stepfamily's voices echoing in her memory. "Nobody will ever want you, Mira. Nobody could love something like you." Maybe they were right. The waiter appeared beside her table with that practiced expression service workers wore when they needed to move someone along. "Miss, are you ready to order, or would you prefer to settle your tab?" Heat flooded her cheeks. Of course, she'd been nursing a single glass of water for 2 hours. They wanted her gone. "I'm sorry, I'll just—" "She's with me." The voice was deep, warm, and absolutely certain. Mira looked up to find a man sliding into the seat across from her, moving with the kind of fluid confidence that made everything else in the restaurant seem to slow down. He was devastating in the way that made her chest tight. Dark hair, amber eyes that seemed to see straight through her, and a face that belonged on old coins or marble statues. The waiter's entire demeanour shifted. "Mr. Thorne, of course, sir. I'll bring the wine list right away." "The 2015 Bordeaux will be fine," the stranger said without looking away from Mira. "And we'll have the chef's tasting menu for 2. The waiter scurried away, and suddenly Mira was alone with this impossibly handsome man who'd just commandeered her disaster of an evening. She should say something. Thank him, maybe, or explain that there'd been a mistake. Instead, she found herself drowning in those amber eyes, something golden and impossibly warm, spreading through her chest like honey in sunlight. Her breath caught. What was that? "Forget him," he said simply, and his voice did something strange to her pulse. "He wasn't worthy of sitting across from you anyway." "You don't even know me," Mira managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know anything about me." A small smile curved his lips. "I know you've been sitting here alone for 2 hours, checking your phone every 5 minutes. I know you ordered water instead of wine because you're worried about the cost. I know you're wearing a dress that doesn't belong to you because you wanted to look beautiful for someone who didn't deserve the effort." Her mouth fell open. "How could you possibly—" "And I know," he continued, leaning forward slightly, "that you bite your lip when you're nervous, that you have ink stains on your fingers from work, and that you haven't had a decent meal in weeks." The golden warmth in her chest pulsed stronger, almost like a heartbeat that wasn't quite her own. She pressed a hand to her sternum, confused by the sensation. "I don't understand." "You don't have to understand, not yet." He extended his hand across the table. "I'm Adrian." She stared at his hand for a long moment. It was elegant, strong, with calluses that spoke of more than office work. When she finally placed her palm against his, the golden warmth exploded through her entire body, settling somewhere deep behind her ribs like a second pulse. "Mira," she breathed. "Mira." He said her name like it was something precious, something he'd been waiting to say. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, and she shivered. Beautiful name for a beautiful woman. "I'm not," she started to protest, but he shook his head. Don't tell me you're not beautiful when you're sitting there looking like every dream I never dared to have." The wine arrived, rich and dark as blood in crystal glasses. Adrian lifted his glass to her. "To new beginnings." "To disasters that turn into something else," she found herself saying, surprising them both. His smile was brilliant. Even better. The food that followed was like nothing Mira had ever tasted. Course after course of artistry on plates, each bite more incredible than the last. But she barely noticed the food. She was too busy drowning in the way Adrian looked at her, like she was fascinating, like every word she said mattered, like she was something worth treasuring. "What do you do?" she asked during the third course, trying to ground herself in normal conversation. "I travel for work, meetings, negotiations, nothing particularly interesting." His deflection was smooth, practiced. "What about you?" "I work at the university library, reference desk mostly. It's quiet work, I like quiet." "Books or people?" "Books don't lie to you," she said, then immediately regretted the bitterness in her voice. "Sorry, that's not—" "Books don't disappoint you either," Adrian said softly. "They don't make promises they can't keep." Something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. There was pain there, old and carefully hidden, but pain nonetheless. "No, they don't." They talked through the rest of dinner about safe things, favourite books, the weather, the absurd price of coffee near campus. But underneath the polite conversation, something else was happening. Every accidental brush of fingers when he passed her something, every moment when their eyes met and held a heartbeat too long, the golden warmth in her chest grew stronger, more insistent, like something trying to pull her toward him. When they finished the last course, Adrian signalled for the check without letting her see it. "Let me walk you home." "You don't have to." "I want to." His voice was firm, gentle. "Please." The night air was cool against her heated skin as they stepped out of the restaurant. Adrian's hand settled at the small of her back, not possessive but protective, guiding her through the crowds. She'd never felt safer walking the city streets. "Thank you," she said as they walked. "For tonight. I don't know why you did it, but thank you." "You don't need to thank me for enjoying your company." "But you could have been anywhere tonight, with anyone, and you chose to rescue someone you don't even know." Adrian stopped walking. In the glow of the streetlight his expression was serious, almost fierce. "Mira, look at me." She did, and the intensity in his amber eyes nearly stole her breath. "I didn't rescue you," he said quietly. "You rescued me." Before she could ask what he meant, they'd reached her building, a converted brownstone divided into tiny apartments near campus. At her door, Adrian helped her with her coat, his fingers lingering at her shoulders. The golden warmth pulsed again, stronger now, and she realized it was strongest when he touched her. What was happening to her? "Would you like to see me again?" he asked, his voice lower now, intimate in the small space of her doorway. "Yes," she whispered, before she could think better of it. "Tomorrow night. I'll pick you up at 7. "You don't even know where I work, or my phone number." That small smile returned. "I'll find you." He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing across her cheek. For a moment she thought he might kiss her, and every nerve in her body sang with anticipation. Instead, he pressed his lips to her forehead, soft and reverent. "Sweet dreams, Mira." She watched from her window as he walked away, disappearing into the shadows between streetlights. Only then did she notice the way the darkness seemed to part for him, the way he moved like he owned the night itself. And in the shadows across the street, she didn't see the way Adrian pulled out his phone, his voice low and commanding as he spoke to someone on the other end. Double the perimeter and find out who paid Marcus to abandon her. Something golden and warm pulsed in her chest as she fell asleep, and for the first time in years Mira didn't have a single nightmare. Adrian arrived at exactly 7 o'clock, as if punctuality was a law he'd written himself. Mira watched from her window as a sleek black car pulled up to her building, and her stomach did something complicated when she saw him step out. He moved like liquid shadow, all controlled power and devastating grace. She'd spent the entire day trying to convince herself that last night had been some kind of fever dream. Men like Adrian didn't rescue librarians in borrowed dresses. They certainly didn't ask to see them again. But there he was, standing at her door with a single white rose and a smile that made her forget how to breathe properly. "You found me," she said, opening the door. "I told you I would." His amber eyes swept over her simple blue dress, her own this time, though still nothing compared to what she'd worn last night. "You look beautiful." Heat flooded her cheeks. "It's just—" "Perfect," he finished, offering her the rose. "You look perfect." The car was even more intimidating up close. Leather seats that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and a driver who addressed Adrian as Sir with the kind of deference usually reserved for heads of state. "Where are we going?" Mira asked as they pulled away from the curb. "Somewhere quiet. I thought we could actually talk tonight." Adrian's hand rested on the seat between them, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. "I want to know everything about you." "Everything is a very big word," she said, trying for lightness despite the way her pulse had kicked up. "I have time." The restaurant he took her to was nothing like Romano's, smaller, intimate, tucked away in a part of the city she'd never explored. The hostess greeted Adrian by name and led them to a corner table that felt like a private world, candles casting golden light across the white tablecloth. "How long have you worked at the university?" Adrian asked once they'd ordered. 3 years, since I graduated." Mira twisted her napkin in her lap. "It's not glamorous, but I like helping people find what they're looking for." "And what are you looking for?" The question caught her off guard. "I don't know. Peace, maybe. A place where I belong." Something shifted in Adrian's expression, became more intent. "Tell me about your family." Mira's throat tightened. "There's not much to tell." "Mira." Her name was soft on his lips, coaxing. "You can trust me." Could she? Something about the way he said it, the absolute certainty in his voice, made her want to believe him. "My parents died when I was 12. Car accident. I went to live with my stepfather and his daughters." "That must have been difficult." "They made it clear I was a burden, something to be endured until I was old enough to leave." The words came out flat, matter of fact. She'd learned long ago not to expect pity. "I put myself through school with loans and scholarships. The library job barely covers rent, but it's mine." Adrian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "They were wrong about you." "You don't know that." "I know enough." His voice carried an edge of something dangerous. "I know you're brilliant and kind and brave enough to make a life for yourself despite everything they put you through." Mira stared at him. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because you're here, because you didn't let them break you." Adrian reached across the table, covering her hand with his. The golden warmth bloomed instantly where their skin touched. "Because you still believe in kindness enough to trust a stranger who sat down at your table." "Maybe I'm just naive. Maybe you're exactly who you're supposed to be." The waiter appeared with their wine, and Mira was grateful for the interruption. Adrian's intensity was overwhelming, like standing too close to a fire. She took a sip of the wine, something rich and complex that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. "What about you?" she asked. "Family?" "My parents are gone too." Adrian's fingers tightened slightly around his glass. "I have a sister, Elena. She's the only family I have left." "I'm sorry." It was a long time ago. But something in his voice suggested the wounds were still fresh. "Elena worries about me, says I work too much, that I need to find someone to share my life with." "And what do you think?" Adrian's amber eyes found hers across the table. "I think I haven't found the right person, until now." The words hung between them, heavy with possibility and promise. Mira's heart did something irregular against her ribs. "Adrian, you barely know me." "I know you've never been on a real date before," he said quietly. Heat flooded her face. "How did you—" "The way you looked at the menu last night, the way you're looking at this one, like you can't quite believe you're allowed to be here." His thumb brushed across her knuckles, sending sparks up her arm. "Their loss, Mira. Every single man who was too blind to see what was right in front of him. You make it sound simple." It is simple. You're extraordinary. The fact that no one bothered to notice before doesn't change what you are. She wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, that she was exactly as ordinary as everyone had always said. But the way he looked at her, like she was something rare and precious, made the words die in her throat. Dinner passed in a blur of conversation that flowed easier than it had any right to. Adrian drew stories out of her that she'd never told anyone. Her secret love of trashy romance novels, her dream of travelling to Scotland to see the libraries she'd only read about, the way she sometimes talked to the books when she was shelving them late at night. He listened to every word like it mattered, asked questions that showed he was really hearing her. When she accidentally knocked over her water glass, he simply signalled for another without making her feel clumsy or embarrassed. "Dessert?" the waiter asked as he cleared their plates. "Actually," Adrian said, "could we have the chocolate soufflé? I know it's not on the menu tonight, but—" "Of course, Mr. Thorne, right away." The waiter disappeared, and Mira blinked. "How did you know they could make something that wasn't on the menu?" "I called ahead. But the waiter acted like you were doing him a favour by asking." Adrian's smile was enigmatic. "I tip well." The soufflé arrived 15 minutes later, perfect and decadent, with 2 spoons. Adrian pushed it toward the centre of the table. "I can't possibly eat all that," Mira protested. "Then we'll share." Something about the intimacy of it, eating from the same plate, their spoons occasionally brushing, made her hyper-aware of every movement. When Adrian caught a bit of chocolate on her lip with his thumb, the golden warmth in her chest blazed like a bonfire. "You're staring," she whispered. "You're worth staring at." The drive back to her apartment was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Adrian's presence beside her was steady, reassuring in a way that made no logical sense. She'd known him for exactly 24 hours. She had no reason to trust him, no reason to feel this safe. But she did. "Thank you for tonight," she said as they pulled up to her building. "It was perfect." It was a beginning. He walked her to her door again, his hand warm at the small of her back. In the dim light of the hallway, he seemed larger somehow, more imposing. But when he looked at her, his expression was infinitely gentle. "Mira," he said softly. "Yes?" "Tomorrow is Saturday. Would you like to spend the day with me? I know a place you'd love." "What kind of place?" "Trust me?" She studied his face, searching for some hint of deception, some reason to be cautious. All she found was patience and something that looked almost like hope. "Okay." His smile was brilliant. "I'll pick you up at 10. This time, when he cupped her face, his thumb traced along her cheek with reverent care. "Sweet dreams, beautiful." He waited until she was inside before walking away, and Mira pressed her forehead against her door, trying to calm her racing heart. Through her window, she watched him pull out his phone as he reached his car, his posture shifting into something more commanding, more authoritative. She couldn't hear what he said, but something about the way he held himself, the way his driver straightened when Adrian spoke, sent a shiver down her spine. Who was Adrian Thorne? And why did it feel like he was keeping secrets as deep as the ocean? The golden warmth pulsed steadily in her chest as she fell asleep, and for the second night in a row her dreams were peaceful. The art gallery was nothing like Mira had expected. Where she'd imagined crowded rooms and pretentious wine-sipping, she found herself in an intimate space filled with paintings that seemed to glow with inner light. The entire gallery had been closed to the public for a private showing, and she was the only guest. "This is incredible," she breathed, stopping in front of a landscape that captured moonlight on water so perfectly she could almost hear the waves. "You see the emotion in it," Adrian said, watching her face rather than the painting. "Most people see technique. You see the artist's heart." "How did you arrange this? A private showing must cost—" "Don't worry about the cost." His hand found the small of her back, warm and steady. "I wanted to share this with you. Just you." They moved through the gallery slowly, Adrian explaining the pieces with the kind of knowledge that spoke of years of study. But Mira noticed something else. The way the gallery owner hovered at a respectful distance. The way every staff member they encountered practically bowed when they saw Adrian. "Mr. Thorne," the gallery owner appeared at Adrian's elbow as they admired a sculpture near the back of the space. "I wanted to personally thank you again for—" "Adrian is fine, Charles." Adrian's voice carried that same quiet authority Mira was beginning to recognize. "Of course, I just wanted to ensure everything was perfect for—" Charles's eyes flicked to Mira, then back to Adrian, with something that looked almost like reverence. "For your Majesty." The words hit Mira like a physical blow. The golden warmth in her chest turned to ice. "Your Majesty." Adrian closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, his expression was resigned. "Charles, thank you for tonight. We'll take our leave now." "Of course, Your Majesty. It was an honour." Mira stood frozen as Charles retreated, her mind struggling to process what she'd just heard. "Your Majesty." There was only one person in the kingdom who was addressed that way. "Mira?" Adrian's voice was gentle, careful. "Let me explain. You're the Alpha King." The words came out flat, emotionless, because anything else would have been a scream. "You're the Alpha King, and I'm nobody. I work in a library. I live in a studio apartment with a broken heater that I can't afford to fix." "You're not nobody to me." "To you?" Mira backed away from him, her hands shaking. "You're royalty. You rule this entire kingdom. People bow to you. And I'm what? Some charity case you decided to rescue?" "No." The word came out sharp, almost desperate. "No, Mira, it's not like that." "Then what is it like?" She was aware that her voice was rising, that she was making a scene in this exclusive gallery, but she couldn't stop herself. What could the Alpha King possibly want with someone like me? Adrian ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly exhausted. "Can we go somewhere private? Please, let me explain everything." "I think I need to go home." "Mira, please just give me 10 minutes. Something in his voice, raw, almost pleading, made her stop. She'd never heard him sound anything less than completely in control. 10 minutes, she said finally. He led her to his car, and the driver, who'd been so polite before, now sat ramrod straight, clearly aware he was in the presence of his king. The ride was silent, tension thick as fog between them. Adrian's building was everything she'd expected, and nothing she was prepared for. All glass and steel reaching toward the sky, with a doorman who practically genuflected when he saw Adrian approach. His penthouse was beautiful in a way that made her borrowed dress life feel even smaller. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that belonged in magazines, art that probably cost more than she'd make in her lifetime. "Drink?" Adrian asked, moving to a bar that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of marble. "Just water." Mira stood in the centre of the room, afraid to touch anything. He handed her a crystal glass and gestured to the sofa. "Please, sit." She perched on the edge of the cushion, every muscle in her body coiled for flight. Adrian sat across from her, close enough that she could see the strain around his eyes. "My name is Adrian Thorne," he began, "but my full title is Adrian Thorne, Alpha King of the Northern Territory." "I know who you are." Her voice was smaller than she wanted it to be. "Everyone knows who you are? What you don't know is that I've been having you watched for the past 6 months." Her blood went cold. "Watched? Like a stalker? Like someone trying to keep you safe?" Adrian leaned forward, his amber eyes intense. "Mira, you're my mate." The word hung between them like a challenge. "That's impossible." 6 months ago, I was visiting the university for a conference. I caught your scent near the library." His voice dropped, became almost reverent. "My wolf knew instantly. You were my mate, my fated one, and you had no idea I existed. Mates are rare. They're everything." Adrian's hands clenched into fists. "For someone like me, for an Alpha King, a mate isn't just a partner. She's the other half of my soul, the one person in the world who can make me whole." Mira set down her water glass with shaking hands. This is insane. I started having you protected immediately, discreetly. You were vulnerable, alone, and you had no idea what you meant to me." Adrian's voice turned grim. "It's a good thing I did." "What do you mean?" "Your stepfamily has been trying to sell you." The words didn't make sense at first. Sell her, like she was property. "I don't understand." "Your stepfather owes money to some very dangerous people. Gambling debts mostly, but other things too. About 2 months ago, he started shopping around for someone who might be interested in an untouched young woman with no family to protect her." Nausea rolled through her stomach. "That's not possible." "The blind date wasn't random, Mira. Marcus was paid by your stepfather to take you somewhere isolated. He was supposed to—" Adrian's jaw worked. "He was supposed to make you disappear." "No." The word came out as a whisper. "No, they wouldn't. They don't like me, but they wouldn't." "They would." Adrian's voice was gentle but implacable. "They were going to sell you to the highest bidder. And when Marcus got cold feet and decided to just abandon you instead of going through with the plan, it gave me the opportunity I'd been waiting for." "Opportunity for what?" "To meet you properly, to court you, to give you the choice your stepfamily was going to take away." Mira stood abruptly, pacing to the window. The city spread below them, millions of lights twinkling like stars. "This is too much. It's all too much." "I know." "You're telling me that my family wants to sell me, that you've been having me watched, that we're supposed to be mated, and I'm supposed to just accept all of this?" "I'm not asking you to accept anything." Adrian stood too, but he didn't approach her. "I'm asking you to let me protect you. I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that this—" he gestured between them— "is real." "How can it be real? I'm nobody special. I'm just—" "You're everything." The words came out fierce, absolute. "You're my mate, my queen, my heart walking around outside my body. You're the woman I've been waiting for my entire life." Tears burned behind her eyes. "But I don't know how to be those things." "Then let me teach you." Adrian took a careful step closer. "Let me show you what it feels like to be cherished. Let me prove that you're worth everything I have to give." "I'm scared." "I know." His voice was infinitely gentle. "I know you're scared. You've been hurt and abandoned and told you weren't worth loving. But Mira, look at me." She turned from the window to meet his amber gaze. "You are worth loving. You're worth protecting. You're worth everything." Adrian's hand rose as if to touch her face, then dropped. "I lost my first mate 5 years ago. An attack on the palace. I thought I'd never feel the bond again, never have the chance for the kind of love that makes life worth living. Adrian, and then I found you, my second chance, my miracle." His voice cracked slightly. "I know this is overwhelming. I know it's terrifying, but I'm asking you to trust me, just for a little while. Let me keep you safe while you decide what you want." The golden warmth in her chest pulsed, stronger now, like her heart was trying to pull her toward him. She pressed her hand to her sternum, confused by the sensation. "That's the bond," Adrian said softly. "You feel it, don't you? The pull between us." "I don't understand what's happening to me." "It's your wolf recognizing mine. Even if you've never shifted, the mate bond transcends human limitations." "I've never shifted. I didn't even know I could." "Most people can't, but you're not most people." Adrian's smile was tender. "You're mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it sent warmth spiraling through her entire body. "I need time to think." "Of course, but not at your apartment. It's not safe anymore." "Where then?" "I have a secure place. A penthouse in the financial district, private elevator, security team, everything you need." Adrian's voice became businesslike. "You'll be completely safe there while you decide what you want to do." "And if I decide I can't do this? If I decide this is all too much?" Pain flickered across Adrian's features, but his voice remained steady. "Then I'll respect your choice. I'll make sure you're safe and provided for, and I'll let you go." "You'd do that?" "I'd hate every second of it, but yes, I want you to choose me, Mira. Not because you're forced to, not because you have no other options, because you want to. She studied his face, looking for deception, for manipulation. All she saw was patience and something that looked almost like hope. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay, I'll stay in your safe house, but I need space to think. I need to figure out what this all means." Relief flooded his expression. "Of course, whatever you need." "And I want the truth, about everything. No more secrets." "No more secrets," Adrian agreed. "I'll tell you whatever you want to know." As they prepared to leave, Adrian made a phone call in rapid, authoritative tones about security arrangements and safe transport. Watching him, Mira began to see past the gentle man who'd rescued her from her disastrous date to the powerful ruler underneath. The Alpha King wanted her, claimed her, was willing to wait for her. The golden warmth pulsed again, and for the first time since the gallery, Mira allowed herself to consider the impossible possibility that maybe, just maybe, she was worth waiting for. The safe house was everything Adrian had promised, elegant, secure, and utterly lonely. For 3 days, Mira existed in a bubble of luxury that felt more like a beautiful prison. Adrian visited every afternoon, bringing her books from antiquarian shops, takeout from restaurants she could never afford, and endless patience for her questions about mates and bonds and the impossibility of her new reality. He never pushed, never demanded more than conversation. When she asked about the mate bond, he explained it with clinical precision. When she wondered about royal protocol, he described court life like it was a job she might choose rather than a destiny she'd been handed. When she caught herself staring at his mouth during one of their quiet dinners, he simply smiled and changed the subject. She was beginning to trust him. More dangerously, she was beginning to want him. The golden warmth in her chest had become a constant companion, pulsing stronger whenever Adrian was near. Sometimes she caught herself pressing her hand to her sternum, feeling for that phantom heartbeat that seemed to echo his own. On the 4th morning, she woke to the sound of voices in the hallway outside her door. Sharp voices, familiar voices that made her blood turn to ice. "I know she's in there!" Victoria's voice cut through the walls like a blade. "My stepsister is mentally unstable, and we have legal authority to—" Mira's hands shook as she threw on a robe and crept to the door. Through the peephole, she could see her step-family clustered in the hallway, Victoria in her designer suit, Camille with her cruel smile, and her stepfather Richard looking uncomfortable but determined. "Miss, you need to leave immediately," one of Adrian's security guards was saying. "This is private property." "We have papers," Richard said, pulling out a folder. "Court-ordered psychiatric evaluation. Mira has been showing signs of dangerous delusion. She believes she's in a relationship with the Alpha King." Victoria's laugh was like broken glass. As if someone like that would ever look at her twice. The words hit Mira like physical blows. For a moment, she was 12 years old again, cowering in the corner while they explained why she could never be good enough, never be wanted, never be worth loving. "You're nothing," Victoria continued, her voice rising. "You've always been nothing, and now you've lost your mind completely." "The commitment order is signed," Camille added sweetly. "All we need is to collect her for transport to the facility." "I'm afraid that won't be happening." Adrian's voice cut through their protests like steel. Mira pressed her face to the peephole and watched him stride down the hallway, still in his suit from whatever meeting they'd interrupted. His expression was arctic, dangerous in a way that made even his security team step back. "Your Majesty," Richard stuttered, all bluster evaporating. "We didn't realise, that is, we have legal—" "You have nothing." Adrian's voice was quiet, deadly. "You have forged documents, false claims, and about 30 seconds to leave before I have you arrested for harassment." "She's our family," Victoria said, but her voice had lost its confident edge. "She's not well. She needs help. The only thing she needs is to never see any of you again." "You don't understand," Richard tried again. She's been having delusions. She thinks she's special, thinks she matters to important people. We're trying to help her. Adrian smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Mira had ever seen. Oh, but she is special. She's my mate. She's going to be your queen. And if any of you ever come near her again, you'll discover exactly how much she matters to me. Through the door, Mira heard Victoria's sharp intake of breath. That's impossible, Victoria whispered. She's nobody. She's worthless. Look at her. She's nothing compared to what you could have. She's everything, Adrian said, and the absolute certainty in his voice made Mira's chest tight. She's everything, and you're about to be nothing at all. But Mira barely heard the rest of the confrontation. Victoria's words echoed in her head like a curse. Nobody, worthless, nothing. All the old wounds tore open at once, years of conditioning flooding back. What was she doing? How had she let herself believe, even for a moment, that someone like Adrian could really want her? She was a librarian who lived in a studio apartment. He was a king. This was madness. By the time Adrian knocked softly on her door, Mira had retreated to the far corner of the bedroom, wrapped in a blanket like armour. "Mira, can I come in?" She didn't answer, couldn't answer. The golden warmth in her chest felt distant now, overshadowed by the familiar cold of self-doubt. Adrian entered anyway, moving slowly, carefully. When he saw her huddled in the corner, his expression crumpled. "Oh, sweetheart, what did they say to you?" "They're right." The words came out broken, barely audible. "They're right about everything." "No." Adrian crossed the room and knelt in front of her, not touching but close enough that she could feel his warmth. "No, they're wrong about everything. They've always been wrong. Look at me, Adrian." Mira raised her eyes to his, and he flinched at whatever he saw there. "Really look at me. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I work in a library. I eat cereal for dinner because it's cheap. I've never been anywhere, never done anything important." "You saved me." "I what?" "You saved me," he repeated, his voice fierce. "For 5 years I've been going through the motions, ruling because I had to, existing because I couldn't figure out how to stop. And then I found you, and for the first time since Lydia died, I remembered what it felt like to be alive. But I'm not. You're kind to everyone you meet. You find beauty in old books and quiet moments. You make everyone around you feel seen and heard and valued." Adrian's hands hovered near her face, not quite touching. "You think I fell for your resume? Your apartment? I fell for your heart, Mira. I fell for the woman who talks to books when she thinks no one is listening." Despite everything, a smile tugged at her lips. "You heard that? I've been having you watched for 6 months, remember? I know you apologise to books when you have to move them. I know you save your lunch money to buy picture books for the children's section. I know you stayed late 3 nights last week to help that elderly man research his family history. How could you possibly know all that? Because I've been falling in love with you one small kindness at a time." Adrian's voice cracked slightly. "Because you matter, Mira. You've always mattered. The fact that your family was too blind and cruel to see it doesn't change who you are." "I'm scared," she whispered. "Of what?" "Of believing you, of letting myself think I could really be someone you'd choose, because what happens when you realise they're right? What happens when you see that I really am just ordinary and boring and not worth—" "Stop!" The command in his voice made her look up. "Mira, look at me. Really look at me." She did, meeting those amber eyes that seemed to see straight through her. "I am the Alpha King. I could have any woman in this kingdom. Princesses, duchesses, billionaires' daughters. Women who were bred for this life, trained for it from birth." His voice gentled. "And I choose you. Not because I have to. Not because of the mate bond. Because of who you are. The bond makes you feel... The bond makes me recognise my mate. It doesn't make me love her." Adrian's hand finally touched her face, thumb brushing away a tear she didn't realise had fallen. "Love is a choice, Mira. Every day, every moment. and I choose you. Even if I'm not ready, even if I don't know how to be a queen, even if it takes you 50 years to believe you're worth choosing, even if you never want to be queen and just want to stay hidden in libraries forever." His smile was soft, infinite. "I'll wait. However long you need, I'll wait." The golden warmth in her chest blazed suddenly, so strong it took her breath away. For a moment she could swear she felt Adrian's heartbeat sinking with her own. "They had papers," she said, changing the subject because the intensity was overwhelming. "Legal documents. Forgeries. I've already had my lawyers look into it." Adrian's expression darkened. "They won't be bothering you again." "What did you do?" "Nothing they didn't deserve. Your stepfather's gambling debts have been called in. He has 24 hours to leave the kingdom. Your stepsisters can stay, but if they come anywhere near you, they'll join him in exile." "You can do that. I'm the Alpha King. I can do anything I want to protect what's mine." Adrian's eyes searched her face. "Are you mine, Mira? Do you want to try this? Really try?" She studied his face, looking for any sign of doubt, any hint that he might change his mind. All she saw was patience and hope and something that looked an awful lot like love. "I don't know how to be what you need." "You already are what I need." Adrian's thumb traced along her cheek. "You're exactly what I need." "I'm still scared." "Then we'll be scared together." He pressed his forehead against hers, and the golden warmth flared so bright she gasped. "But you're not going back to them. You're not going back to believing you're nothing. Because you're everything, Mira. You're everything I never knew I was looking for." For the first time since her step-family's cruel words, Mira let herself hope. Maybe she wasn't ordinary. Maybe she was worth choosing. Maybe she was brave enough to let herself be loved. "Okay," she whispered, "and okay. Okay, I'll try. I'll try to believe you. I'll try to be brave enough for this." Adrian's smile was brilliant, relieved, absolutely radiant. "That's all I need. Just try." When he kissed her forehead, soft and reverent, the golden warmth settled deep in her bones like a promise. For the first time in her life, Mira felt like she might actually be home. 3 days after the confrontation with her step-family, Adrian appeared at Mira's door with an expression that was equal parts determined and nervous. "I want to formally present you to the kingdom," he said without preamble. Mira nearly choked on her coffee. "You want to what?" "There's a royal ball tomorrow night, the Harvest Festival Gala. Every important person in the kingdom will be there." Adrian sat across from her at the small breakfast table, his amber eyes intense. "I want everyone to know you're mine. I want you to know it too." "Adrian, I can't possibly—" "You can." He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. The golden warmth sparked instantly at the contact. "You're going to be magnificent." "I don't know how to be at a royal ball. I don't know the protocols or the dances or—" "You know how to be yourself. That's all I need." The very idea terrified her. Hundreds of people, all of them watching, judging, wondering what the Alpha King could possibly see in an ordinary librarian. "What if I embarrass you?" "Impossible." Adrian's voice was firm, absolute. "You could never embarrass me, Mira. You could only make me proud." The next 24 hours passed in a whirlwind that left Mira feeling like she was living someone else's life. A team of stylists descended on the penthouse, transforming her into someone she barely recognized in the mirror. The gown they chose was midnight blue silk that seemed to shimmer with its own light, cut to make her look like she had curves she'd never known she possessed. "You look like a queen," Elena, Adrian's sister, said as she put the finishing touches on Mira's hair. She'd arrived that morning to help with preparations, and Mira had liked her immediately. Warm where Adrian was intense, quick to laugh where he was measured. "I look like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's clothes." "You look like you belong." Elena's eyes met Mira's in the mirror. "You know, I've never seen my brother this happy, not even before—" She stopped herself. "Before his first mate died?" Elena nodded. "Lydia was wonderful, but this is different. With you, he's not just happy, he's alive again." When Adrian saw her in the gown, he went completely still. For a long moment he just stared, his expression unreadable. "Say something," Mira whispered, suddenly self-conscious. "You're going to stop traffic," he said finally, his voice rough. "You're going to stop hearts." "I'm terrified." "I know." Adrian approached her slowly, like she was something precious that might shatter. "But you won't be alone. You'll be with me." The royal ballroom was everything Mira had imagined and nothing she was prepared for. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across marble floors. Women in gowns that cost more than her annual salary glittered like jewels. Men in perfectly tailored tuxedos moved with the confidence that came from generations of wealth and power, and all of them turned to stare when Adrian entered with Mira on his arm. "Breathe," Adrian murmured against her ear. "Just breathe." "They're all looking at us. They're looking at you, and they're wondering how I got so lucky." The crowd parted before them like water, conversations dying as they passed. Mira could feel the weight of hundreds of gazes, could practically hear the questions being whispered behind fans and champagne glasses. Who is she? Where did she come from? What could she possibly have that would capture the Alpha King's attention? "Your Majesty." A woman approached them near the centre of the ballroom, her silver gown perfectly complementing her platinum hair. "Duchess Vivian Ashford, I don't believe I've had the pleasure of meeting your companion." The pause before companion was deliberate, calculated to sting. "Duchess Ashford," Adrian's voice was coolly polite. "I'd like you to meet Mira, my mate." The silence that followed was deafening. Mira felt the moment the entire ballroom seemed to lean in, everyone straining to hear what came next. "Your mate," the Duchess repeated, her voice carefully neutral. "How unexpected." "Not unexpected," Adrian corrected. "Inevitable." "Of course." The Duchess's smile was sharp as a blade. "I'm sure she's lovely, though I do wonder about her breeding, her family connections. One does like to know these things when meeting someone in such an elevated position." The words hit their target perfectly. Mira felt her cheeks burn, felt the familiar shame crawl up her throat. She was about to excuse herself, to flee to the ladies' room or a balcony or anywhere that wasn't here, when Adrian's voice cut through the gathering crowd like steel. "Her breeding!" Adrian's tone was dangerous now, royal authority bleeding into every syllable. "Her family connections?" "Well, yes," the Duchess said, seemingly oblivious to the warning in his voice. "Surely you understand the importance of—" "I understand that you're questioning my judgment." Adrian's words fell into the silence like stones into deep water. "Are you questioning my judgment, Duchess?" "Of course not, Your Majesty. I merely—" "Because my judgment tells me that she's everything." Adrian's voice carried across the ballroom now, ensuring that everyone could hear. "My judgment tells me that she's kind and brilliant and brave. My judgment tells me that she has more grace in her little finger than most people manage in their entire lives." Mira stared at him, barely breathing. "But most importantly," Adrian continued, his amber eyes never leaving the Duchess's face, "my judgment tells me that anyone who questions her worth is questioning mine. And I wonder how that could be anything but treasonous." The Duchess went pale. Around them the crowd murmured, a ripple of shock and excitement passing through the ballroom. I apologize, Your Majesty. I meant no offence." "See that you don't." Adrian's voice was arctic. "To either of us." The Duchess retreated, and gradually the conversations around them resumed. But Mira could barely focus on anything beyond the way Adrian had just publicly declared her worthy, had just staked his reputation on her value. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "Yes, I did." Adrian turned to face her fully, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Mira, I need you to understand something." "What?" "I'm about to ask you something, and I need you to know that whatever you answer, it won't change how I feel about you." Before she could ask what he meant, Adrian was moving, leading her to the centre of the dance floor. The orchestra, as if reading some invisible cue, began to play something slow and achingly beautiful. And then, in front of the entire ballroom, Adrian dropped to one knee. The collective gasp was audible. "Mira," Adrian said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom, "will you do me the honour of being my queen?" It wasn't just a proposal, it was a public claiming, a declaration before witnesses, an irrevocable statement of intent. Every person in the kingdom would know by morning. Mira looked down at Adrian, the Alpha King kneeling before her, and felt something shift inside her chest. The golden warmth blazed so bright it nearly blinded her. "Adrian," she whispered, then louder, "Yes." The words seemed to echo in the silence, and then Adrian was standing, sliding his mother's ring onto her finger, and the ballroom erupted in applause. But Mira barely heard it, because Adrian was looking at her like she'd just given him the world, and when he spoke, his voice was meant for her alone. "May I kiss my mate?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. When Adrian's lips met hers, the golden warmth exploded through her entire body. The kiss was gentle, reverent, and absolutely perfect. When they broke apart, Mira realized that the entire ballroom was watching, that this moment was being witnessed by everyone who mattered in their world, and for the first time in her life, she didn't care who was watching. She was exactly where she belonged. Later, after they'd danced until her feet hurt and made small talk with more nobles than she could count, Adrian led her out onto a private balcony overlooking the palace gardens. "How do you feel?" he asked, wrapping his jacket around her shoulders against the cool night air. "Like I'm dreaming. Like any moment I'm going to wake up in my tiny apartment and discover this was all some elaborate fantasy." "It's real," Adrian said softly. "We're real." "I know." Mira looked down at the ring on her finger, at the ancient stone that caught moonlight like captured starfire. "Adrian, are you sure about this? Really sure? Because once we do this, there's no going back." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Adrian cupped her face in his hands, thumb brushing across her cheek. "You said yes." "I said yes." "You chose me. I chose you." The words felt like a vow, like a promise, like the most important thing she'd ever said. When Adrian kissed her again under the stars, Mira finally understood what the golden warmth in her chest had been trying to tell her all along. She was home. She was chosen. She was loved. And for the first time in her life, she believed she deserved all of it. 2 months after the royal ball, Mira woke to the sound of Adrian humming in the kitchen and the scent of coffee drifting through their shared bedroom. Their bedroom. The phrase still made her heart skip, even after all this time. She found him at the stove, hair mussed from sleep, wearing nothing but pyjama pants and an expression of intense concentration as he attempted to flip pancakes. The sight was so domestic, so perfectly normal, that she had to lean against the doorframe for a moment just to breathe. "Good morning, my queen," he said without turning around, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "How did you know it was me?" "I always know when you're watching me." Adrian glanced over his shoulder, amber eyes warm with affection. "Besides, you make this little sound when you're trying not to laugh." "I do not make a sound." "You do. It's adorable." He turned fully, spatula in hand, and his expression grew serious. "How did you sleep?" It was a question he asked every morning, and she knew why. For weeks after moving in with him, she'd woken screaming from nightmares about her step-family, about being worthless, about Adrian realizing his mistake and sending her away. "No nightmares," she said, and watched relief flicker across his features. "I haven't had one in 2 weeks." "Good." Adrian moved toward her, and she automatically stepped into his arms. The golden warmth that had once been a mystery was now as familiar as breathing, a constant reminder of the bond between them. "That's good, sweetheart." They ate breakfast on the terrace overlooking the palace gardens, discussing the day ahead. Mira had insisted on keeping her job at the university library, though it had been transformed into something much larger, a royal literacy initiative that brought books and educational programs to every corner of the kingdom. "The children's reading program launches today," Mira said, flipping through her notes. 15 new locations across the city. "You're going to change lives," Adrian said, pride evident in his voice. "You know that, right?" "We're going to change lives. This program exists because you made it possible. This program exists because you dreamed it." Adrian reached across the small table, threading their fingers together. "I just provided the resources." Later that morning, Mira stood in the grand library of the palace, surrounded by 20 children between the ages of 5 and 10. They sat in a circle on colourful cushions, eyes wide with attention as she opened the first book. "Once upon a time," she began, "there was a little girl who believed she was invisible." From the doorway, Adrian watched her weave magic with words, watched the children hang on every syllable. This was what she was meant for. Not just to be his queen, but to nurture and teach and inspire. And he'd known it from the moment he'd seen her helping that elderly man research his family history, but seeing her with the children confirmed it. She was extraordinary, and somehow, impossibly, she was his. "Your Majesty?" Elena appeared beside him, following his gaze to where Mira was encouraging a shy little boy to read aloud. "The wedding preparations are nearly complete. The caterers want to confirm the menu." "Whatever Mira wants," Adrian said automatically. "She said to ask you something about it being your wedding too." Elena's smile was fond. "You know, she's good for you. You're different with her." "Different how?" "Happy. Actually, genuinely happy, not just going through the motions." Elena squeezed his arm. Lydia would have liked her. The words should have caused pain. They would have, even a few months ago. Instead, Adrian felt only gratitude. Lydia would have liked Mira. More than that, she would have understood why Adrian had fallen so completely for the quiet librarian who talked to books and believed in the power of stories. That evening, they walked through the palace gardens as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Mira had changed from her formal day clothes into a simple sundress, and her hair fell loose around her shoulders. She looked young and beautiful and utterly content. "Penny, for your thoughts," Adrian said, as they paused beside the fountain at the garden's heart. "I was thinking about the little boy today, Marcus, different Marcus," she added with a small smile. "He told me he wants to be a librarian when he grows up, because librarians are magic." "Smart boy, librarians are magic." "Adrian." Mira turned to face him fully, her expression suddenly serious. "I need to tell you something." His heart clenched. Even now, even after everything, part of him still feared she'd decide this was all too much, that she'd want to go back to her simple life. "What is it?" "I love you." The words came out in a rush, like she'd been holding them back. "I know we're getting married in 2 weeks. I know we're mated, but I needed you to know that it's not just the bond. It's you. I love you." Relief and joy flooded through him so suddenly he almost staggered. "Mira, I love the way you bring me tea when I'm working late. I love that you learned to braid my hair because I mentioned missing my mother. I love that you listen to every word I say like it matters." Her voice grew stronger, more certain. "I love that you saw something worth loving in me when I couldn't see it myself." Adrian cupped her face in his hands, overwhelmed by the honesty in her green eyes. "I love you too, so much it terrifies me sometimes." Good terrified or bad terrified? The best kind of terrified, the kind that means I have something worth losing. Adrian's thumb brushed across her cheek. "But I'm not going to lose you. We're going to have 50 years of arguments about book organisation and children who inherit your kindness and my stubbornness." "Only 50 years?" 50 years to start. Wolves mate for life, remember?" They kissed as the fountain sparkled behind them, surrounded by roses that bloomed in the moonlight. When they broke apart, Mira was smiling. "Speaking of the wedding," she said, "I have a request." Anything. I want to write my own vows. Of course. What do you want to say? Mira was quiet for a moment, considering. I want to promise to choose you every day, not because we're fated, not because of the bond, but because love is a choice, and I choose you. That's perfect, Adrian said softly. That's exactly perfect. 2 weeks later, Mira stood in the palace chapel wearing her mother's pearls and a gown that made her feel like a fairy tale princess. But it wasn't the dress or the flowers or the hundreds of nobles filling the pews that made her feel magical. It was the way Adrian looked at her as she walked down the aisle, like she was everything he'd ever wanted, everything he'd never dared to dream. Dearly beloved, the officiant began, but Mira barely heard the traditional words. She was too busy memorizing this moment, this feeling of absolute rightness. When it came time for vows, Adrian spoke first, his voice carrying clearly through the chapel. Mira, you saved me from a life of existing instead of living. You taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone perfect for you. I promise to protect your heart as fiercely as I protect your life. I promise to listen to every story, support every dream, and love every part of who you are and who you're becoming. Then it was her turn, and somehow her voice was steady, despite the tears on her cheeks. Adrian, you taught me that I was worth choosing. You showed me what it feels like to be treasured. I promise to choose you every day, not because we're fated, but because love is a choice, and you're the easiest choice I'll ever make. When they kissed as husband and wife, the golden warmth that had brought them together blazed bright enough to light the world. Months later, Mira sat in her favourite corner of the palace library, surrounded by children who had become as familiar as family. She was reading them a new story, one about a lonely king and a brave librarian who saved each other, when she felt Adrian's presence in the doorway. And they lived happily ever after, she finished, closing the book as the children applauded. Again, read it again, little Marcus called out, and Mira laughed. Next week, she promised. Right now, I think your parents are waiting for you. As the children filed out with their escorts, chattering excitedly about the story, Adrian approached her chair. Good story, he said, settling on the arm of her chair. Very realistic. You think so? Absolutely, though I think the real version is even better. Mira leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of his chest against her shoulders. Through the tall windows, she could see the kingdom spread out below them, their kingdom, their home, their future. Where are you listening from? Mira asked suddenly, the words coming from nowhere. Adrian chuckled. What? Sorry, I was thinking about stories and how they connect people across distances. I love hearing your thoughts about these fated mate stories in the comments. She twisted to look up at him, smiling. If you'd like to support me and hear more stories like ours, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people discover these tales of love conquering fear. Are you having a moment? Adrian asked, amused. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just thinking about how our story started with me being stood up in a restaurant, and now I'm here, surrounded by books and children and you. Mira reached up to touch his face. It feels impossible, like a story someone made up to give people hope. The best stories usually do, Adrian said, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. But this one's real. This one's real, Mira agreed, and settled back into the warmth of his arms, surrounded by books and love and the absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. In her chest, the golden warmth pulsed steady and sure, not just the bond between mates, but the rhythm of a heart that had finally found home.